Well, things certainly got crazy over the weekend, and I'm honestly not even sure where to begin. I guess I'll start with the first email from Nvidia, as that'll get those of you up to speed who missed out on the drama. Though at this point, I suspect you're pretty much all up to speed. Anyway, I am talking about the email where Nvidia banned us from receiving Founders Edition graphics cards for day one reviews, claimed that we were out of touch with gamers and the industry, and said that if we want back into the review program, we must change our editorial direction. Okay, so this story blew up extremely quickly, and for us it was kind of strange being at the center of it, and we weren't really sure why, and still not really clear what we've actually done wrong, but we'll talk more about the why later on in the video. Since the initial email informing us that we'd no longer be receiving review samples of Nvidia Founders Edition graphics cards, along with some other pretty crazy stuff that we'll certainly get into in a moment, Nvidia has sent a follow-up email apologizing and walking back everything. And of course, we will also show that email and talk about that a bit later on in the video. Now, at this point, I'm going to assume that you've watched the Linus Tech Tips WAN show where Linus with co-host Luke ripped Nvidia a new one over the email they sent to us. Like, Linus really hammered Nvidia over this one, and rightfully so, and I very much appreciate everything he's done here, not just for us, but really for all reviewers, and then by extension anyone who relies on reading and watching independent tech reviews. He's really done us all a great service. If you haven't watched the WAN show that aired over the weekend, then I would urge you to go check that out, and I'll put a link to it in the video description. Might even pay to watch that first and then come back here to get our take on the situation. Actually, before we continue, I would like to take a moment to thank everyone who has supported us here at Hardware Unboxed. The support from viewers has been, I don't know how to put it into words, insane. It's been really touching stuff, from all the comments we've seen on YouTube, Twitter, and then of course all the people who have signed up on Patreon and Floatplane to support us directly. Great stuff, cannot thank you guys enough. And Linus really has been pivotal in turning this thing around, and we much appreciate Jay weighing in as well. Really excellent video by him that covered this issue extremely well. Steve from Gamers Nexus has also been hugely supportive, and you can expect a high quality video from those guys later in the week. I'm sure that one's going to be a doozy. I've seen so much supportive content released over the weekend on YouTube. A lot of the big guys, as I just mentioned, but there's also been a lot of smaller guys sticking their necks out, so pretty risky for them. Some guys like The Good Old Gamer, Not an Apple Fan, some great videos for them. They were very quick to jump on this one, so thank you to them, and really anyone else I'm missing. I know there are quite a few videos and of course a lot of nice comments, so I guess I just want to start this by saying thank you very much. We really do appreciate it. Okay, so onto a quick recap. After missing out on the Geforce RTX 3060 Ti Founders Edition graphics card, we were a bit puzzled as to why it seemed every other reviewer in the region received an FE sample but us. And of course we got an FE sample for the 3080, the 3090, the 3070, so a bit odd. Of course, we have received a pile of AIB cards that were on display for our 3060 Ti review, and they were released simultaneously alongside with the FE cards. So we still were able to provide a day one review here at Hardware Unboxed, and of course the written version was also supplied over on the TechSpot website. However, it quickly became obvious that we were left out of the FE sampling once all the reviews went live, so I emailed my Nvidia contact asking them if there was a reason why Hardware Unboxed didn't receive an FE card for the 3060 Ti. And days later, I still hadn't received a reply, which is unusual, so I sent them a second email, and I did that to another member of the team in the Asia Pacific region, to which they did reply, telling me that they would look into it. Anyway, 4 days later, on the 7th of December, I still had not received a reply, so I sent a third email asking if they had any news on what's going on. Later that afternoon, we received an email from Brian Del Rizzo, the head of global PR for Nvidia. Not someone that we often deal with, though we are well aware who BDR is. He's the big man at the top of the food chain when it comes to dealing with media and PR relation stuff, obviously. So the email came from him, and I'll show you the email in a moment. Basically, we did provide this information to Linus at Linus Tech Tips, and Luke actually read it out on the WAN show. But for this video, I'm just going to read it out again for, anyone who missed the WAN show and hasn't taken my advice and gone back and watched it. Hi Steve, we have reached a critical juncture in the adoption of ray tracing, and it has gained industry-wide support from top titles, developers, game engines, APIs, consoles, and GPUs. As you know, Nvidia is all in for ray tracing. RT is important and core to the future of gaming, but it's also only one part of our focused R&D efforts on revolutionizing video gaming and creating a better experience for gamers. This physiology is also reflected in developing technology such as DLSS, reflex, and broadcast that offer immense value to consumers who are purchasing a GPU. They don't get free GPUs, they work hard for their money, and they keep their GPUs for multiple years. Despite all of this progress, your GPU reviews and recommendations continue to focus singularly on rasterization performance, and you have largely discounted all of the other technologies we offer to gamers. It is very clear from your community commentary that you do not see things the same way that we, gamers, and the rest of the industry do. Our Founders Edition boards and other Nvidia products are being allocated to media outlets that recognize the changing landscape of gaming and the features that are important to gamers and anyone buying a GPU today, be it for gaming, content creation, or studio and streaming. Hardware Unboxed should continue to work with our add-in card partners to secure GPUs to review. Of course, you will still have access to obtain pre-release drivers and press materials. That won't change. We are open to revisiting this in the future, should your editorial direction change. Brian Del Rizzo, Director of Global PR, Geforce. The first few paragraphs of this email are truly bizarre to me. It reads like a public press release, not something you'd send to a well-informed media outlet who likely understands how your products work and perform better than you. This to me makes it appear as though BDR knew full well that the email would be leaked to the public, and of course it was always going to be. If anything, they have to know how we roll here at Hardware Unboxed. Now, I'm not going to get into all the rubbish in the first two paragraphs. I won't waste time on that. Most of it's just wrong. I'm sure you guys know that. And the part about us getting free GPUs is just, I don't know, what was just stupid. Should have never been in there. And really, the entire email is beyond stupid and really should have never happened. I think that's fair. So moving on, they claimed that we're focusing singularly on rasterization performance and have largely discounted all the other technology Nvidia offers to gamers. I'm going to ignore the part where they talk down to us by claiming we're out of touch with gamers and the industry. I don't think I need to talk to you guys about that. You can certainly make your own decisions based on our catalogue of work to date. Since day one, or at least from the first ray traced enabled title being Battlefield 5, we have heavily benchmarked and analysed ray tracing and DLSS and have continued to do so every step of the way. We now have evidence of multiple videos dedicated to these topics on the channel, and funnily enough, the first media quote on the Nvidia DLSS page is from Hardware Unboxed, calling the technology extremely impressive. And our take on ray tracing in particular is fairly complex, and it can't easily be summarized in a few words or even a few sentences, which is why Tim and myself just had a half-hour-long discussion in a recent Q&A talking about when and where it makes sense, and, well, just a lot more stuff. As I said, it is quite a complex topic to cover. It isn't easily done in a few words, or really can't be. But to say that we've focused on rasterization performance is just flat out a lie and very easily proven wrong. As many of you will be aware, we provided a day one review for the Geforce RTX 3080, which in my opinion was highly positive, stating stuff like the 3080 is an excellent value product that I would personally buy, and I downplayed the high power usage for reasons that were outlined in the review. There was some negative stuff about the shenanigans they pulled with Digital Foundry, the whole benchmark preview thing, which we didn't particularly like, and there were a few comments about suspected supply issues, but other than that, it was a very positive review. Admittedly, I did only look at ray tracing and DLSS performance in Wolfenstein Youngblood, but explained that these technologies would be getting their own dedicated RTX 3080 content, which followed up just 2 days later. The coverage was extremely detailed and again, largely positive. Nvidia actually contacted us after that content was published and appeared very happy with what we had to say. And then 2 weeks later, we investigated reports of Ampere GPUs crashing, and we found that it wasn't a major hardware flaw or a design issue, and we helped clear up the misinformation surrounding that topic. And again, Nvidia did appear very happy with what we said in that video. They praised us for properly investigating the issue and not jumping on the bandwagon for easy views, and many of their board partners also reached out to thank us for that accurate reporting. Then we had the RTX 3070 review, and I began wrapping up that review by saying, overall, the 3070 is a great value product. Though I did note that an AMD competitor was incoming, and it might pay to wait and see how that one plays out, though I think that is a very reasonable thing for a reviewer to say. I also did re-emphasize, though, after mentioning their competition, that in today's market, the 3070 is as good as it gets in terms of cost per frame and even performance per watt. So that's yet another positive Geforce 30 series review. The RTX 3090 review wasn't quite as positive for obvious reasons, but surely there was nothing unusual about our conclusion, and in many ways I think it was more favourable than what you heard from the likes of Linus and GN Steve. After that, we covered the Radeon RX 6800 and 6800 XT. Both received very positive reviews as they are exceptionally good value products, though we have since slammed AMD in numerous videos for the pricing and availability issues. Then, just 2 days before Nvidia sent me what we feel is the dumbest email anyone in PR has ever sent to a reviewer, we checked out the 6900 XT, a review that featured a number of RT and DLSS benchmarks showing the RTX 3090 crushing the 6900 XT, and a review that I feel was much more negative towards the product in question when compared to what Nvidia received from us for their 3090 review, and the reasons for that were outlined in the video. The timing here really has been quite amazing on Nvidia's behalf. Not only did we just crap all over AMD's flagship Radeon product, but the same day that that email arrived, Tim was already 1 day into testing ray tracing and DLSS performance in Cyberpunk 2077, a video that went up on the channel the day after this story first blew up. But apparently we never test ray tracing or any other Nvidia features such as DLSS. Seriously, you could not write a more ridiculous script than what Nvidia has come up with here. So why did Nvidia send that email? I guess the why is what everyone has been asking themselves, and I have had a number of pretty major tech media outlets as well as some smaller guys who did receive an FE card contacting me, quite concerned that they might end up being next on the chopping block, as many of them didn't include any or very many RT benchmarks in their Ampere GPU reviews. And it's obvious why ray tracing testing is very limited and rasterization performance is the focus. Most games don't support ray tracing still. After a few years of the introduction of the Turing hardware, we still have a very select list of games, and then an even smaller amount of games on that list where we feel it actually makes sense, where ray tracing is of benefit. Think games such as Watch Dogs Legion, Control, maybe Minecraft, not really a Minecraft expert, and now Cyberpunk 2077. But even then, the requirements for each game is still very steep. You're certainly not playing Cyberpunk 2077 with ray tracing enabled using an RTX 2060, a 2070, a 2080, or any of the newer super variants. Therefore, it's unreasonable to expect reviewers to focus on what is still very much a niche feature, and we here at Hardware Unboxed have already given it more attention than most, and our DLSS coverage has been very extensive. I'm not as bold as to say it's the most extensive on YouTube, but it certainly has to be up there. Something else that wasn't lost on us is the fact that Nvidia's undermining their own message, as well as all other reviewers who happen to like ray tracing or are starting to come around as we slowly are with titles such as Cyberpunk 2077, for example. GN Steve also picked up on this and made a tweet saying that Nvidia has now made it so that any reviewers covering RT will become subject to scrutiny from untrusting viewers who will suspect subversion by the company. Short-sighted cell phone from Nvidia. And Steve is completely right about that. And this also applies to not just right now, but also a year from now, or possibly even when Nvidia's next generation of RT-enabled hardware arrives, which could and likely will enable a much better experience than the one we're receiving today. So the email makes no sense, and quite clearly Nvidia's stance on this makes no sense either. So what's going on here? Linus said on the WAN show that this appears personal, and it's not something he'd believe Ryan Del Rizzo would ever say, let alone put in words, and based on what I've heard, it sounds like he's right, though BDR still screwed up big time here by signing off on the email, and then of course sending it to us, something that should have never happened, and frankly, I am still completely perplexed that it even has happened. It's been alleged that the Nvidia PR team drafted the email and then presented it to BDR to be sent out, presumably giving it a lot more weight. I know at least one disgruntled Nvidia PR employee that doesn't really like us here at Hardware Unboxed, presumably because we don't buy the bullshit. We call it as we see it, and they really don't like that. So they've allegedly made this personal, and despite our very positive Ampere coverage, they cannot get past the fact that we won't parrot their ray tracing claims, and therefore we had to go. And obviously they felt like this would hurt us, which is kind of funny given that we covered the RTX 3060 Ti completely unaware that we were banned from covering the FE model, something we didn't discover until a little over a week later. Given previous interactions that Tim and myself have had with BDR, which have always been very straightforward, very professional, I was already quite confident that he didn't write the original email, and we have been since informed that this is supposedly correct. It's unclear if BDR even read the email. It's possible he just trusted his PR team, he was very busy or whatever, and he just sent it off without properly reviewing its contents. Either way though, it is a bad look for him, but I suspect he was played by members of his own team, members who we believe have a personal vendetta against Hardware Unboxed. And this could become a real media relations nightmare for Nvidia moving forward, as it seems their disgruntled Nvidia PR employees have sort of tunnel vision on our content, similar to many Nvidia fanboys, basically sucking up all the negative things we say while ignoring all the positives. The tipping point's likely to have been our RX 6800 review, where we recommended it over the RTX 3070 due to rasterization performance, VRAM capacity, anyway, all those details are in the review, but we didn't cover ray tracing extensively in that review. We did conclude the video by saying people interested in more mature ray tracing should opt for Nvidia, so it's possible that the PR team was so outraged by this review and other negative things that we've said about Nvidia features in the past that they've forgotten our overall opinions. For example, in the case of the RX 6800 review, they probably focused solely on the fact that we didn't really cover ray tracing performance, and forgot or ignored the fact that we said you should buy Nvidia if ray tracing performance matters to you. Anyway, the fact that this does appear personal is extremely unprofessional, but it helps make sense of what's happened here. Linus also suspected on the WAN show that this was a personal attack, and he talked about how this move from Nvidia hurts us by threatening our livelihood, as we are unable to provide content when people want it the most. So in other words, a day one review. I get where Linus is coming from here, and it is true to a certain extent, or at least it would be if our channel was more like Linus Tech Tips. We don't just focus on day one content, and for a release like the RTX 3080, it's typically our worst performing content, as there's a flood of reviews that go live on the same day, at the same time. As a result, we've actually found in the past that delaying our review by 2 to 3 days improves exposure, and quite considerably. Also, we don't just provide a day one review and then move on to other content. We do a lot of follow-up content here on the channel. As you guys know, we look at features such as ray tracing and DLSS, as we did with the RTX 3080, and we often do things like big 40 to 50 game head-to-head benchmark battles. So yeah, that content often performs the best for us. So I guess you could say we really do well out of the buzz surrounding new hardware releases. So not just the day the hardware is released, we found that the channel's success has really come through extensive follow-up content. Also, I cannot stress this enough. We do not need Nvidia. We are more than happy to work with them on getting review samples for day one reviews, but if they want to play dirty and pull the crap they played in this email, they can just bugger off. We do not need them. And we need them about as much as Linus does, and he said much of the same. And the reason for that is, well, you guys. Because of you, those of you who watch our videos, who sign up for Patreon or Floatplane, you enable us to stand up to Nvidia and say, we don't need you to send us samples, we can just buy them ourselves, provide an independent review, because we know our audience will watch them even a week after release. And this has been proven in the past with products like the Geforce RTX 2060. That was another instance where Nvidia removed us from the review program. They just did so much more quietly that time. It is also worth noting that we have very low overheads here at Hardware Unboxed. We don't have a big team that we need to finance. It's just Tim and myself, and that's it. We work from home. I'm in a bedroom in my house right now. It's quite a small room, but it works for this. We don't drive fancy cars. We don't spend a lot of money. We're very passionate about tech. We enjoy testing and reviewing PC hardware, and that's really the only reason we do it. the fact that we do get paid is obviously a bonus, and of course it does enable us to do what we do here at Hardware Unboxed full time. And just quickly as a side note, for any of you thinking, what's the big deal with Nvidia choosing who they send review samples to? Hardware Unboxed isn't entitled to an FE graphics card, and well, that's true, but I hope by this point it's quite obvious that that's not the issue with the email sent by Nvidia. Rather, the issue being that Nvidia is trying to bully the media into falling in line, pushing the narrative that they wish to convey to the consumer. The way it's meant to be reviewed, I guess you could say. Maybe that's a program Nvidia is currently working on. Also, signing off the email with, "We're open to revisiting this in the future should your editorial direction change." That's just horrific. Suggesting that independent media need to change their editorial direction in order to receive review samples. It's something Nvidia should have never, ever put in writing. That's extremely damaging to the company's image and not something they're likely to recover from quickly. It's also worth noting that this year marks 20 years that I've worked directly with Nvidia on product releases, reviewing their products, covering them, doing day one reviews. 20 bloody years. I've also covered their hardware over at TechSpot for well over a decade now, and I still provide written reviews there to this day. And TechSpot is no small fry as far as tech websites go. Nvidia first sent me their Geforce 2 GTS back in early 2000, and then I checked out the Geforce 2 Ultra later that year. I remember as a much younger Steve being super excited to check out the Geforce 2 Ultra. I still remember the excitement. It was a really fun time. And since then I've covered almost every single GPU that they've released over the past 20 years. And for the most part, the relationship has worked well. In fact, things really only started getting quite rocky around the release of Turing with this whole ray tracing thing. Thankfully, after the shitstorm that ensued over the weekend, Nvidia very quickly walked back this decision and offered an apology for sending the first email. The apology read very much like Brian Del Rizzo wrote it himself, and as I said, they've now walked back everything they said in that original email. So we should be receiving Founders Edition graphics cards for the next major release, and we should be doing so in a timely manner so we can obviously use it and get our review out in time. So I'm looking forward to that. I am accepting Nvidia's apology, though I am slightly concerned that they'll try and pull this crap again once they think the media titans like Linus and Jay are no longer looking. That said, Nvidia might have learnt a thing or two about how we operate and hopefully have realised that it is in their best interest to support independent and honest media. Now, as a final note, I'd just like to quickly talk about some past coverage of Radeon and Geforce GPUs here at the Hardware Unboxed channel. I realise explaining that we're neutral and fair tech reviewers probably isn't necessary for the vast majority of you here, and I shouldn't waste my time trying to convince brainwashed fanboys that we are independent reviewers that don't have any preferences. But during all the drama, we have seen a big influx in new subscribers who probably aren't that familiar with our past work. Of course, if you are at all concerned or interested in our stance on past products that you're familiar with, then you can go back and watch those videos. For a quick overview though, we did provide overwhelmingly positive Geforce 10 series reviews. We really did like Pascal here at Hardware Unboxed. The GTX 1070, the 1080, the 1080 Ti in particular, they all received glowing reviews. Contrast to that, the RX 480 and then the follow-up RX 580, they received lukewarm reviews, while I trashed the RX 590 for the terrible introductory price of $280 US. Our opinion of the RX 580 and 590 did improve over time as the prices fell, but the day one reviews, they weren't exactly glowing reports. Also, my day one Vega 56 and 64 reviews were some of the more negative reviews you'll find online, and I always recommended the GTX 1070, 1070 Ti and 1080 over those AMD products. I never really warmed to Vega, and I continued to recommend competing Nvidia parts for the life of the product. Then we have the Radeon 7, which I did give a very negative review, stating that even if AMD knocked $100 off the price, the RTX 2070 would still be the better buy. And then all follow-up content still came to the conclusion that the RTX 2080 was the better product, which is saying something given that we thought the 2080 was a bit of a nothing burger. In fact, the only positive Radeon reviews you're going to find on the channel over the past few years are for the Radeon RX 5700 series. but even then we made a video dedicated to calling AMD out over their driver issues. Then we didn't love the 5600 XT, though it is a reasonable offering, and then we flat out refused to recommend the gimped 5500 XT. So in the past 4 years, we haven't had a lot of great stuff to say about Radeon GPUs. Again, the exception being the 5700 series and now the new 6800 series. So it is very, very petty of Nvidia to carry on like they have in light of so much positive coverage on the channel. And it is worth noting that despite giving AMD's Radeon division a hard time over all these years, they've never once threatened to withhold review samples. They've never wasted hours of our time banging on about how wrong we are about their products. They just let us do our job, and they appear smart enough to know that there's nothing regarding the performance or value of their products that we don't already know. And furthermore, it doesn't really matter whether the coverage of a particular brand is positive. Nvidia should respect different opinions and the independent review process. But in short, I'd estimate that a good 80% of the Geforce coverage featured on the Hardware Unboxed channel is very positive. So Nvidia's PR team needs to stop acting like crazed fanboys with piss poor arguments. They need to get a grip on reality and start doing their job properly. Or if this week's events are anything to go by, they're in for a bloody rough time. But hey, at least some good has come out of this. Nvidia's strengthened and united tech reviewers to the point where crap like this simply won't fly anymore. Tim and myself, along with Linus, Jay, and many others, have made an example of Nvidia here, and an example for not just other companies, but also other tech reviewers. If you happen to get strong-armed by any company, reach out to fellow reviewers and go public with the information, much like what Tech Team GB did earlier in the year with MSI. Doing so means we'll hear a lot less of this kind of dirty tactic crap being used in the future. Anyway, that is going to do it for this one. Certainly not the type of content that I enjoy making, and while Nvidia has just bought us the kind of exposure that, well, we could only dream of, I'd still rather not have to deal with this crap and just get on with what we love doing here at Hardware Unboxed, which is test hardware. And right now I am meant to be doing a CPU test for Cyberpunk 2077, along with I'll look at some older AMD and Nvidia GPUs. Again, a huge thank you to everyone who has supported us through this ordeal. I really can't tell you how much we appreciate it and what it means to us. So yeah, big thank you. As I said, I don't know what to say. It's been huge, and yeah. If you'd like to discuss this issue further with Tim and myself, then do check out our Patreon or Floatplane accounts. Both of them will give you access, or either of them will give you access rather, to our monthly live stream that'll be coming up later this month. And I'm sure you guys will have more questions regarding this whole drama, and we'll be happy to answer them live there and chat further about it. And of course, if anything happens between now and then, we'll also talk about that on the live stream. And of course, we just appreciate everyone who has already signed up to Patreon or Floatplane, because it really does remove a lot of the power companies have over us, such as Nvidia, because we can afford to go out and buy an RTX 3090 or whatever we need, and we're not too worried about day one reviews. They're really quite stressful, they're a headache, and for us who do heaps of follow-up content, they're not our bread and butter. So, you know, if Nvidia would like to give us some time off, then so be it. Of course, we would much rather work with them. We would much rather cover their products and give you guys the information as soon as possible. But we're not going to do that while changing our editorial stance. Anyway, I should really wrap this one up. I haven't got too much sleep lately, and this was really the last thing we needed coming off the Cyberpunk 2077 benchmark. I hadn't even uploaded that benchmark when this email landed, and then Linus wanted to speak to me on the phone, which was really cool. Super impressed with Linus. Cannot speak highly enough of the guy. But anyway, I'll wrap this up for now because I do need to get some rest. Again, thank you everyone. I'm your host, Steve. I'll see you again next time.